The President. Members may continue to ask the Chief Executive questions. Mr. Kwok-him. Oh, is not back yet. Dr. Kenneth Leung. Mr. C.Y. Leung, you talked about a lot of issues of our economy. Well, in fact, the work you mentioned is trifle. In a basic law, it provides that Hong Kong government may, on its own, maintain and develop relations and conclude and implement agreements with foreign states and regions using the name Hong Kong, China. That's in Article 151 of the Basic Law. So, C.Y. Leung, before you seek re-election, will you help Hong Kong enter or sign up as a member of the AIIB or a member of the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership? Chief Executive. Mr. President, well, my answer will be very brief. I've answered this question before. Whenever opportunities arrive, we will strive to participate in AIIB. AIIB is a major initiative of our country, and Hong Kong as the connector, as an international financial center, has the requisites to contribute to the mainland. All these new initiatives and new, we will strive to take part in it. As Dr. Kenneth Leung said just now, and as we often say to others, we would like to use the name Hong Kong, China to develop relations and sign agreements with foreign states and countries. However, as the government presses ahead full steam, the public should also acknowledge our effort. If other states consider that there are uncertainties or instabilities in Hong Kong, I don't think it will be conducive to our work. Dr. Kenneth Leung, I don't agree that we have uncertainties in Hong Kong. Well, you haven't answered me. In terms of our economy, in terms of the strategies, what is your view on TPP? Chief Executive. Any multilateral organizations that promote economic development, we are happy to take part in them. However, this is this can't be done only by our wishful thinking. Mr. Kwok-him. Well, at present, the world is focusing on the problem of immigrants in Europe, and in Hong Kong, we also are facing problems arising from refugees on refoulement claims. We have over 10,000 cases at the moment. In July and August, we received some 400 applications. And the Director of Immigration earlier agreed that the system is being abused. Many refugees are not genuine refugees. They only want more opportunities in Hong Kong to improve their lives. And we also see fake refugees in Hong Kong, and they remain in Hong Kong to work as illegal workers under the pretext of non-refoulement claims. And members of the public would ask why we should allow abuse of this mechanism. Why aren't we doing our best to plug loopholes? There are neighboring cities that have torture claims mechanism. They have restrictions on the time for making a claim or a cap on the use of public expenses. Why aren't we doing any of these? Since 1992, the UNHCR's convention has been applicable to Hong Kong, and we, as a member state, is also required to follow the rules and to enforce the decision made by the CFA in 2004. And there have been more and more non-refoulement claims from countries, in particular from Southeast Asian countries. And we have a unified assessment mechanism. Ever since the implementation of the mechanism, the Hong Kong government has been looking into the legal framework, because in Hong Kong we have the rule of law, and we must review the mechanism under this legal framework. And Mr. Kwok-him just now made the point. Many foreign applicants understand that ultimately they will be repatriated because their claim may not be successful. And yet time is needed under this assessment mechanism. For them to stay in Hong Kong, the mechanism commenced in March last year, and the Security Bureau since then has implemented a number of measures, including interviews and the preparation of bundles in order to save time from claimants requesting for bundles. And now the processing time has been reduced from 25 weeks to 15 weeks. And with the consular officers, I have been discussing this issue. And I have urged for the respective countries to cooperate with us as far as repatriation or deportation is concerned. The Hong Kong government attaches great importance to this issue. We don't want our hospitality to be, or our kindness to be abused. In enforcing the CFA decision and the UNHCR's convention, what we want to do is to accommodate foreign refugees under genuine torture claims. However, we want to shorten the process time and the time needed before deportation as well. Mr. Kwok-him, according to media reports, there are practitioners in the legal sector who are keen to help these so-called refugees file non-refoulement claims. The majority of claims also apply for legal aid from the Hong Kong government to apply for and to review these cases. And will the government consider whether the legal expenses have been incurred because of abuse of this mechanism? I mean, as soon as the applicants arrive, they immediately raise their hands and make a claim. And will this become an incentive so that more are attracted to come to Hong Kong to make such claims, and thereby increasing the burden on our public coffers? Well, there is a problem regarding abuse or even this loophole. I understand that the legal aid department has solicit lawyers and solicitors vetting these applications, appointing lawyers for these applicants. There is a process to go through. I cannot rule out the possibility of abuse. So I thank Mr. Kwok-him for his reminder. I will follow this up with the legal aid department to make sure that our taxpayers' money will not be abused under this non-refoulement claim mechanism. Mr. Kwok-hing, Chief Executive, we understand that Hong Kong people are concerned about the aging population and retirement protection, in particular employees in Hong Kong. And in your election manifesto, Chief Executive, you undertook to scrap the MPF offsetting mechanism. And recently, there have been rumors that in the upcoming policy address, there may be something about this. And as the news came out, employees in Hong Kong are happy to hear about this. Of course, there is opposing voices in the community as well. However, my question for the Chief Executive is this. Some academics have suggested that to cushion the impact of offsetting, of scrapping the MPF offsetting mechanism, the government could spend just $3 billion. And if the government takes the lead in scrapping the offsetting mechanism in the civil service, it will be a good starting point. So my question is, how are you going to honor your promise to scrap the MPF mechanism within this term? Chief Executive. Well, we are still determined to honor our promise, and in the past period of time, I have been discussing with the CS and other director bureaus, director of bureaus. We hope to give you some of our ideas very soon. But as Mr. Wong said, after the news came out, and definitely the news didn't come from the government. And indeed, after the news came out, we have heard different responses from the labor sector and other sectors. In terms of MPF offsetting mechanism and importation of labor, I hope that both sides could consider the overall interest of Hong Kong. All these issues are thorny issues, but the Hong Kong government is willing to tackle these issues. We hope that we could achieve success, but then at the same time, we don't know whether there will be controversies in the community or whether there will be additional public expenditure. That very much depends on the attitudes of both sides. I hope that both can be considered.
Mr. Kwok-hing, President, thank you. I'd like to follow up on the Chief Executive's reply. He has sidestepped the thrust of my question. Will the government be taking the lead to become a good employer? We're all aware that the employer and the employee are not on the same page with regard to the cancellation of offsetting arrangement, but you are being moderately proactive. The government should become a good employer, and then other employers will follow suit. Will, Mr. Chief Executive, will you address my question directly? You said you will be making preparation with your team. How long does it take you for the preparation? What is the timetable? In this term, we have 1 year left to go. Mr. Chief Executive, President, I don't think I can give any undertaking by implicitly or explicitly saying what the government is going to do, but we will be adopting an open and liberal attitude in this regard. I hope that the employer and the employee will not just dig their heels in and look at their own position. They should move a step closer towards each other's position. This is an issue that has been exercising the minds of Hong Kong for so long, and this is an issue that is really undermining the harmonious relationship between the employer and the employee. And we do have a lot of issues to be tackled. I hope that I would be able to listen to more views, and I hope that we will have the common good in mind. We'd like to get this done, but it would take both sides to work together. Mr. Kwok-hing, you cannot follow up anymore. Dr. Wai-kwok. Mr. President, in mid-August, the chief executive led the delegation to Zhuhai to look at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge project. As someone from the engineering sector, I am very concerned about the Hong Kong section of the project. Mr. President, I'd like to put this to the chief executive. Has the government reviewed the completion and commissioning date of the project? What difficulties are there, and what measures will be taken by the administration to make sure that the rest of the projects will be proceeding smoothly? Chief Executive. President, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge is a colossal project. It is a massive project. It is a terribly complicated a project. With such a colossal and complicated project, the economic and social benefits will be just as massive. I've been there to have a look for myself on 2 occasions. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute Dr. Low hasn't been there. One has to be there to appreciate the difficulties or the complexity of the project. In the Pearl River estuary, as members are aware, you're aware of the geology and the situation there. We have to build a bridge there, and we have to maintain the navigation route. And it is a link route. And indeed, the challenges are really considerable. Because of the magnitude of the project, I watched a TV program which talks about the bridges, the complicated bridges all over the world. And the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge was featured in this program. This project is expected to be completed in 2016, and now we have come across some engineering difficulties. And all these are being overcome, and we cannot rule out the possibility of further complexity. And we don't have any conclusion about the actual completion date. Dr. Wai-kwok, President. When it comes to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, the chief executive keeps talking about the bridgehead economy. For this to happen, it is not confined to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. In terms of bridgehead economy, how confident are you, Mr. Chief Executive, that you're going to pull this off? Chief Executive. Now we can develop bridgehead economy. On the Hong Kong side of Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge, we have the artificial island there. The development potential will be huge. Now, for the artificial island, for instance, before this term of administration came to office, now this island is about 1 hectare in size, and it doesn't have any business or commercial facilities. The only thing we have is the convenience store. Members are aware that we have changed the planning to take full advantage of this piece of land to tie in with the northern section of the Cheuk-yan Airport and the Lantau development project. And all these are part of the bridgehead economy. The SAR government will be getting on with the planning in this regard. As regards the economic and social benefits of the bridge, in particular the benefits arising from the bridgehead economy, I am pretty optimistic. Mr. Paul Chan, the Secretary for Development, has done a lot of work in the Committee on Lantau Development. Let's hope that the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge will be up and running as soon as possible, and the bridgehead economy will be in full play. Mr. Cheuk-yan, Mr. Leung, you've been here for 3 years. Now, this is the time we settle the score with you. You fail in terms of constitutional reform. You talked about the economy. Hong Kong's economy is good. Now, you were lucky. Hong Kong people are not as lucky because our livelihood has not seen an improvement. The whole community is seething with anger. Your economic benefits fail to filter down to the members of the public. They fail to filter down because all your policies are skewed in favor of the business sector, and you're not bold enough to do anything to formulate policies to improve livelihood. There are two things I'd like to settle score with you. First, you promised before that progressively you would cancel the offsetting arrangement in the MPF. Second, legislating for the standard working hours. These are in your manifesto. 3 years on, what have you done? You have been stalling all along. Are you trying to stall the matters until such time as this legislative term comes to an end, and then you say that we're running out of time? Now, we're indeed running out of time. Mr. President, you must understand that we have 8 months to go. If you do not go down the legislative path right now, then within our term, the 4-year term, it would be well nigh impossible for us to legislate. Your question, please, Mr. Lee. Well, I'm trying to settle score with Mr. Leung. You gave us the undertaking. Are you going to be legislating? You talked about the employer and the employee. Where do you fit in? Don't you have any position? You have to do what you said you were going to do. If the government has the right to legislate, if you stick by your manifesto, you have to bring in the legislation. Do not blame the employer and the employee. We're running out of time. Are you going to be introducing the legislation, the bills regarding the cancellation of offsetting arrangement and the standard working hours to the floor of this council? Chief Executive. President, I'd like to say again that economic development indeed benefits the members of the public. As the income improves, more grassroots people are benefiting. Now, for the 30% lowest pay workers, full-time workers, between June and August, their pay compared with the same period last year had a pay rise of 7 to 8% higher than inflation. Now, for the full-time employees, if you divide them into 10 different segments, that the lowest quartile, they benefit from the economic prosperity over the past year. They stood to benefit the most. They had 7 to 8% of pay rise, or 3 to 4% after inflation. Overall, they had 5.7%. With economic development, it doesn't benefit the business sector alone. We're not on the side of any side, any party. We're not a government for the business sector. We're not a government for the grassroots people. We have to partake in the fruits of our economic prosperity. Mrs. Carrie Lam is heading up the Poverty Commission. Under her stewardship over the past 3 years, through the efforts of this administration, the population in poverty has been reducing. I'm sure Mr. Lee and other members and the members of the public cannot deny the fact that through the concerted efforts, we have achieved pretty good results. if the government is really on the side of the business sector, we probably would not do this work like the rezoning initiatives and so on. If we do not increase land supply, then the benefits will be accrued to a particular sector. So we have to look at the overall situation. We have the policy address and give members the undertaking. We have to implement them one by one. Indeed, there are very difficult issues like an offsetting arrangement, the standard working hours. We need time to get this done. In terms of offsetting arrangement, I've answered the question posed by Mr. Wong. As regards the standard working hours, the SL government is not stalling on the matter. We're not asking the committee to slacken their pace. Rather, we'd like to have a report as soon as possible. This standard working hours will be an unprecedented initiative in Hong Kong. So we have a committee with members from various quarters. We also look at other jurisdictions and the implications and so on. So they are prepared to submit a report to the government in the first quarter of next year. As soon as we have the report, we will review the situation and take a decision. Thank you. Mr. Cheuk-yan, I'm really scared, Mr. President. He said he needs time to get this done. Are you saying that you're going to be running for another term? Please don't scare me. We're running out of time. If you want time to get this done, the MPF offsetting and the standard working hours, you said you need time. How much time are you going to have? We're running out of time in this term. You don't have a lot of time in your term. Are you going to seek another term? He is stalling on the matters. Are you seeking another term? And you said you want more time. Please do not stall the matters. Please do not bamboozle the people of Hong Kong in order to seek another term. My question is very simple. He said he needs more time. Is he effectively trying to run for another term? Mr. Chief Executive. Now, this is a controversial issue. If we can build consensus in the community and approach the issue more pragmatically without any introduction of any conspiracy theory, then once the consensus has been forged, whoever is the LegCo member, whoever the chief executive is, with the consensus, we will move ahead on that basis. In the remaining term for the LegCo or for the chief executive, I hope that on these matters of concern to the members of the public, we will not lose our time and get on with the work.
Mr. Felix Chung. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, just now, a number of members from the labor sector wanted to set the score with the chief executive, and I represent the SMEs. I want to settle the score with the chief executive as well. In his election manifesto, he talked about a number of points. During his election, he said that he wanted to upgrade and transform a number of industries such as electronics market in Sham Shui Po, and also the textiles industry in Cheung Wan, so as to build connections with the mainland and also to support the transformation and upgrading of manufacturing industries, in particular to strengthen the traditional industries such as jewelry, the manufacture of jewelry, toys, etc., and to find more exhibition space in the mainland for them, and also over tax matters to negotiate with the mainland authorities to find a solution, and also to review administrative measures and legislation unfavorable to the development of SMEs, and also to assess the business environment for SMEs. Please ask your question, Mr. Zhong. Well, these points I talked about aren't really controversial. However, over the past 3 years, I haven't seen the government done anything in this regard, and I'd like to settle score with the chief executive. Well, about the points mentioned by Mr. Zhou, they can be found in the policy address. For example, in Wuhan, we have a Hong Kong center, we have a Hong Kong pavilion exhibiting products manufactured in Hong Kong. In the course, I personally took part in promoting our work, and I asked for the mainland authorities to support us. And we also have an advisory group on promoting fashion industry in Hong Kong. And on our pilot initiatives in the coming 3 years, we have invited the advisory group to give us recommendations. We also have a Zhuhai Fund of $1 billion to help the manufacturing industry upgrade and transform, and to help them tap the mainland market. These are not really groundbreaking measures, and yet you can find them throughout the basket of measures implemented by the government. Well, about the Wuhan initiative, well, it so happened that I'm also a member of the association, and yet everything is still in the pipeline. Nothing is concrete. Over the past 3 years, these initiatives have nothing to do with the government. The industry and have been acting on its own. Well, I hope that the chief executive, you can remember what you've promised. You said you would assess the number of issues posing obstacles to SMEs, so that you should not easily give away your position as far as MPF offsetting arrangement is concerned. Well, SMEs make a major contribution to Hong Kong's GDP. So anything that can help SMEs, we're willing to do that. As for the Wuhan issue, I think I'll leave that to the Manufacturers Association. However, we have been liaising closely with the municipal government in the mainland, so I am optimistic about that. Mr. Kin-yuen. Mr. President, well, if there was somebody in a university council who is objected by 85% of the teaching staff in the university, and that there would be a referendum on his appointment, and we understand that this person has been having very bad relations with the universities. Then my question for Mr. Leung is this: if this person cannot earn the trust of teaching staff and students in the university, then should this person be considered chairman of the university's council? Well, I think everyone understands that my question is based on Mr. Arthur Lee's incident, but I'm not really talking about Mr. Arthur Lee. I'm talking about somebody with these characteristics. Chief Executive. The Chief Executive may appoint members to the Council of Universities, and talent is what we want. I hope that we should refrain from making assumptions, and we should take an objective stance. Well, just now the Chief Executive sidestepped the question, but it's loud and clear. I talked about the person's characteristics, but he is saying that these are not important. What is important is the person's talent. Well, if this person is supported by all, then the council can regain trust. However, if this person is not supported by the university, then this would put the council in a confrontational position, and there will be a divide. I want to know whether these are considered important as far as his appointment decision is concerned, or that he doesn't mind confrontations at all. The Hong Kong government would not want to see any disharmony as far as appointment is concerned. Mr. Ip also took part in recent public discussions on the appointment of candidates who are suitable, who are not. I don't think this should be encouraged. I don't think this attitude should be adopted in discussing publicly whether a certain candidate is suitable to be appointed. We should not politicize the matter. Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, Mr. President. Just now, the Chief Executive quoted figures suggesting that our economy is performing quite well. However, there are also some figures showing that Singapore is doing much better than Hong Kong. And last month, Mr. Chen Zuo pointed out this situation. And there are bottlenecks to our development, manpower and land. As far as land is concerned, Secretary for Development, Mr. Paul Chan, already said that he would look into several suggestions, including reclamation. On labor, now our main problem is that we have a manpower shortage. We have 10 infrastructure projects, but we're importing far less labor than before. How are you going to address the issue, Chief Executive? Manpower shortage doesn't only pose a problem on construction projects. It's also an obstacle in other sectors as well. It poses a constraint on economic development or development of Hong Kong as a whole. The issue has to be addressed. Now, the Hong Kong government also attaches importance on the issue of land. As for addressing labor shortage, we have been implementing measures, but the measures haven't been effective. Now, when I answered Mr. Kwok-hing's question on cancelling the MPF offsetting arrangement, there are a number of issues, labor issues, not only about standard working hours or MPF offsetting arrangement, but labor shortage as well. And there should be concessions made by both employees and employers over these matters. I believe there is room to make concessions from both sides. Well, Mr. Leung talked about his good intentions, but nothing concrete really has been implemented. As Mr. Leung just now said, there have been ongoing confrontations between employers and employees, and the labor representatives are suggesting to walk out of the committee. Are there any specific measures? Of course, we are going to press ahead with our work on various fronts to tackle the number of issues mentioned, including labor shortage. The Hong Kong government has not spared its effort in tackling this issue. Last question, Professor Joseph Lee. Well, I'm fortunate to be able to ask this question. Well, yesterday I was buying flowers and I bump into this 5-year-old boy, and the 5-year-old boy who is now 6 told me that the post box that he used to use will be gone soon, and he asked whether Hong Kong will be similar to Japan when history can be altered, and whether the government house will be dismantled, and whether there will be interference in the running of the universities. Now, I wasn't able to answer these questions. Now, Chief Executive. Now, as far as the relations between China and Britain, it seems that we're in a golden era. But if, on the other hand, we're doing some unnecessary gestures, for example, to scrap some of the colonial symbols in Hong Kong, then how are you going to explain to the Central People's Government? Well, in fact, the question isn't a new one. I'm sorry, you're Professor Lee, not Mr. Kin-yuen. Before reunification, all government instruments, equipment bearing royal insignia showing the British sovereignty would have to be changed. This is not something new. Well, Mr. President, my name is Joseph Lee. Well, Chief Executive has answered my question. In terms of diplomacy, in terms of politics, if it's incorrect, well, when you are to report to the CPG, how are you going to do that? I don't think this issue would come up in my report to President Xi. This is the end to the Xi's questions and answer session. The Chief Executive will now leave the chamber. Members will please stand up. The meeting is not yet adjourned. Please remain silent.